Ada, I can't forgive my husband for my labor experience. I, 24F, have two children, 2F and 9-month M, with my husband, 29M. Labor was a nightmare with our oldest. She was an emergency C-section due to being breech, and she was born at 36 weeks because they couldn't stop my labor from progressing. To make it worse, I did it all alone. My husband and I were both in the military at the time and were stationed 7 hours away from one another. I don't hold this against my husband because I know there was nothing he could have done to be there on time. He arrived about 5 hours after our daughter was born, and I finally wasn't alone anymore. Fast forward 2 years, I was due to have my son, and at 36 weeks on it, my water broke while I was at work. My husband complained about having to leave work to take me to the hospital because, are you sure it's really labor? It's probably just Braxton Hicks, relax. I told him, if you don't want to leave work, that's fine. I will drive myself to the hospital. But I'll make sure to let them know you aren't welcome in the room until after the baby is here. He ended up leaving work and driving me to the hospital, but once we got there, labor wasn't progressing. I was stuck at 3 centimeters, and my contractions were steadily 10 minutes apart. They sent me home and told me to return once they were 5 minutes or less apart. On the way home, my husband again said, "Are you sure they aren't just Braxton Hicks?" Mind you, this was after the nurses confirmed I was in labor. When we got home, my husband decided he was going to go hunting and to let him know if labor gets worse. He left me alone willingly to care for our 2 years old while I was laboring. My contractions got down to 5 minutes apart. I texted to let him know, and all he said was, "What do you want me to do about it?" He ended up shooting a deer and had me outside in the cold taking pictures of him with the deer while contracting every 5 minutes. I didn't feel ready to go back to the hospital yet, so I put the 2 years old to bed and we went to sleep. In the morning, my contractions were still at 5 minutes. I took a bath, took a walk, tried eating, and nothing was happening, so I told him we needed to go back to the hospital. By the time we got there, they were between 3 and 4 minutes apart, but all my husband could talk about was the stupid deer and how he was going to get it to the butcher and taxidermist. Once they took me back to the repeat C-section, my husband was really supportive. I have underlying health conditions and he was very attentive, making sure the anesthesiologist knew about everything going on. Unfortunately, my son came out not breathing. He had to immediately get transferred to a NICU at a different hospital. It was one of the most painful experiences I've had to go through altogether, and the next day, all I wanted was a milkshake. It sounds silly, I know, but after asking him multiple times, my husband never would drive up the road to get me one. Our entire family laughs at the situation and thinks it's such a funny story, and that I'll laugh about it someday. But after 9 months, I still feel so dismissed, like he doesn't care about me. It feels like he put his hobby over his laboring wife, and it honestly makes me grateful he wasn't there for the birth of our daughter. I feel such resentment over the whole situation, and I don't know how to move past it. My husband tells me it isn't a big deal, and I'm overly sensitive every time I bring it up, and our therapist doesn't think it's broken beyond repair, but I honestly just need some outside perspective. Ada for not just getting over it, and for not forgiving him? How do I move forward from here and begin to forgive the past? Edit. I wanted to add for clarification, I shouldn't say my water broke. I should say it was leaking. I was shocked at how many people called me out for this, lol. I'm not a doctor or a nurse, and I was a little preoccupied when my OB was explaining it to me. Also, a bunch of you called me out for defending my husband's character, and you're right. I've always tried to see the best in people, and that is what I base my opinion off of. What y'all helped me realize is a man with good character would have already been forgiven. The fact I'm still hung up on this, and he hasn't done enough to make up for it, makes me realize he might not be as good of a man as I thought. I am still trying to reply to all of you, but it's a lot. I never expected this to blow up the way it has so quickly, and I definitely didn't expect to learn I was underreacting. I genuinely thought y'all would tell me I was being dramatic. As for the family finding humor in this situation, I'm not too sure if it's because they find it out of character, or maybe because it's a delivery story we'll never forget. It's also possible they just feel awkward being told the story and laugh it off. We didn't tell most people about this until after the fact, so maybe they're just thinking, at least it's over now. As for my friends, most of them understand where I'm coming from, but don't have children of their own to relate the situation to. I plan to bring this up in our couple's therapy appointment tomorrow, so I'll try to come back and update with his and the therapist's reaction. Thank you for all the support. It warms my heart hearing from so many caring people, and also stings knowing people went through similar and worse during labor. Update. So we had our couple's counseling appointment today, and I did bring this up. For the sake of simplicity, I'll be referring to the husband as M and the therapist as T. I reiterated the story above and was pretty emotional while doing so. I described just how abandoned and scared and alone he made me feel in the moment and said that I want to forgive him and move forward, but it's hard to do when he's dismissive of my feelings and doesn't seem to think he is anything to be forgiven for. T told M that it sounded like a super traumatic experience for me and she understands why I'd still be hurting from this. She also asked him how he would have felt had something happened to me, and he didn't get to me on time. M was like, well, I was stressed and that was the only thing I could think of to relieve my stress. Isn't it better for only one of us to be stressed instead of both? I said, so, you being stressed was more important than your wife, who is stressed mentally and physically from being in active labor? So, you thought leaving your laboring wife alone to care for your toddler was justified in order to relieve some of your own stress. At this point, he told M that he acted immature and selfishly. M told me that he remembers asking me if it was okay for him to go hunting. I told him I don't remember having that conversation, but if I did tell him to just go, it wasn't because I wanted you to leave me. It was because if I didn't let you go, that's all I'd be hearing about the rest of the night, and I probably didn't want to deal with that while trying to bring your child into the world. I asked M if he wanted to be married to me because of who I am, or only for the sake of being married. T said we were out of time and asked M not to answer. She said she wanted him to sit with that and really think about it before giving an answer. After therapy, I called M and asked if there was anything he wanted to discuss from the appointment, and he told me he didn't understand why I'm still hung up on the situation, and he thought we were past it. I explained to him why we're not, and let him know that he hasn't done anything to make up for it, or even show remorse. He tried telling me that I was the only person who saw a problem with what happened, and I pointed out that's not true. I gave him specific examples, but could tell those wouldn't be good enough since they're my friends/siblings. So I told him about this post. I let him know I'd posted it to get unbiased opinions on if I really was overreacting, and told him what the majority of you had to say. I also offered to send it to him, but he didn't seem interested. He then apologized by saying, I'm sorry that I asked you to go hunting and you said yes. I told him that's not a valid apology, and if that's how he was going to act, the conversation was over. He said that he shouldn't have gone, but really just didn't think about it in the moment, and I should have told him that I wanted him to stay home. I told him that if he truly cared about me and valued me, I wouldn't have to beg him to care about me. I also shouldn't have to tell him how to care about me. He then went on to say he felt he'd been doing a lot to try and make up for the disconnect. Spending more time with the kids, putting dinner leftovers in the fridge while I put the kids to bed, helping me wash baby bottles. I told him he was barely doing the bare minimum, and just because he was doing absolutely nothing before, that doesn't make him Superman for doing the bare minimum now. I told him he wasn't doing anything to go above and beyond to show me he loves, supports, or respects me, and if he wants the marriage to work, that needs to change. And wanted me to tell him exactly what he could do to make up for the past, and I told him it. If after 5 years you still don't know how to show me you love me or care about me, then that's more of a reflection on you than me. We ended the conversation there, because I needed to get off the phone. Later when I got home, I didn't speak to him, nor did he start conversation with me. We've barely spoken, and I'm sure his ego is hurt, but I quite frankly don't care anymore. I've decided to give it to our next therapy session in 2 weeks, and see what happens between now and then. I don't plan to be the initiator on any conversations. I'm going to take the back seat and observe what he does with the space. If I see positive change and can feel him really wanting to make things better, I will try to work it out. But if things don't progress and he falls back to his habits, I'll be asking him for a divorce after the next session. I genuinely don't want it to come to this, but I want my kids to know they never have to stick in bad situations just because a piece of paper declares you married. I don't want either of my kids to think it's okay to be treated this way or to treat their partner this way, and I told him as much. I think he's finally taking me seriously, so I guess I will update again in 2 weeks after the next therapy session. Update 2. Sorry it's taken me a bit longer to update than I originally thought. We have not been back to therapy yet because we had 2 family friends pass away last week, so there has been a lot going on. But M is a completely different person in the best way possible. He told me that he was upset with himself for acting the way he did while I was in labor and that it hurt me as much as it did, and he wished I had told him how I was really feeling in that moment, and he never would have left my side. I told him that I tend to let him do what he wants, so I know what he'd rather do, and in that moment, he showed me he would rather be doing a hobby than supporting his laboring wife. He said he understood and, for the first time, gave me a genuine apology and asked how he can show me that he does care and want to make up for his mistakes. We had a lengthy conversation about where I felt overwhelmed and how he adds to that and how he can take some of the weight off my shoulders. Since then, he has stepped up so much that I didn't even realize how much I was doing to support the house until now. He's washing the dishes and making sure my pump parts are washed for the next day. He takes the baby after I nurse at night and puts the baby to sleep while I manage the toddler. Instead of asking me what I need help with or what needs to be done around the house, he says, "This is what I plan to accomplish today. Is there anything else you'd prefer me to focus on?" He even started sweeping the house. I don't think I've seen him hold a broom in like 3 years. He has been more affectionate, even in front of other people. And my Amal even pointed out I seem less stressed and happier. I did make sure to tell him I see his efforts and that I appreciate it, but I'm also weary that he's just going to get comfortable again and stop contributing after he feels he's in the clear, and I'm not going to tolerate it again. He admitted that he tends to fall into that place of comfort when he knows everything will get taken care of whether he does them or not because of the way he was raised, and he knows he needs to work on that. He also asked me to hold him accountable and point out if he starts slipping again, so he can course correct. At the end of the day, M isn't perfect. Neither am I. But I will take a trying man over a perfect man any day. As long as the progress keeps climbing, I think we'll be all right. Thank you, everyone, for the advice and your own stories. I do know that I deserve better than my last labor experience, and I am now demanding it from a man who owes me as such. Also, we're continuing in therapy, so our growth doesn't stall. We just had to reschedule due to funeral services for the family friends who passed.